Whenever you're ready.
It's not my way to fill the rates.
Okay, so. If you want me to warn.
Actually love that.
Oh.
I thought last year for 2 semesters and I love that.
That for you, that's good, thank you. This you? Yeah. Thank you.
Hey guys, thank you so much for joining today. We're starting our In Conversation series for spring 2024. We have an amazing guest speaker today joining us. Justin Newlin is a member of our industry advisory board for the School of Fashion, and he is people, culture, and talent acquisition consultant for many international brands. And we're thrilled to have Justin with us today. So over to you, Justin.
Go ahead. Thank you. Thanks to everybody for having me. Before we get started, this is a conversation. So at any point, raise your hand, ask a question. We can talk about it as we go. There's a Q&A section at the end, but I believe in let's have a conversation versus me just sit up here and talk. But yeah, it's great to be back, Academy of Art. I've worked at the school since maybe 2014 or 15. I'll tell you more about myself, but it's just, I really appreciate this building, and I've spent a lot of time hiring interns and graphic designers and fashion designers and print designers from the school to Gapping. So thanks for having me. And again, let's make this conversation and let's talk. So I think it's really important anytime you sit and listen to someone talk for a while to know who they are and where they come from. I always just find that interesting myself. A lot of these pictures that are going to be in this are pictures I have taken myself. This just was kind of like my initials, JN. That's what I saw anyways. Maybe you see something different. But so yeah, I'm from a very small farm town in Indiana, about 4,000 people, with a Walmart on the highway and Main Street in the downtown. And my family still lives there. A lot of them, I have many siblings, but I think some of my family might be watching. So hello, Indiana. I was very lucky in life to be introduced to San Francisco as a teenager. And that kind of blew my mind, as you could imagine, coming from small town Indiana. And so after I graduated from Purdue University, where I studied graphic design and retail management, I immediately drove to California. And my first job, I could say I've had, something just happened to the screen.
Yes, it's now shared with the everyone on Zoom, so people can see
It's moving.
the screen on Zoom.
It's moving on its own.
It could be.
I know, but we're not there.
No, it's all right.
Can-
Oh,
can
you
go
should.
back?
Yes.
I'll drive this.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, it shouldn't move on its own.
Okay. Just, you can see the whole screen.
Sure. Let me
1 second.
ask them. Yeah, guys, this is our first talk this semester, so we still have some technical thing going on.
Everything changed.
There we go.
There we go.
And you see that, Scott?
Yes, I'm seeing it.
I love it.
Yeah.
This is real TV here. So yeah, I was saying that I started graphic design at Purdue. I learned of this thing called merchandising. I was like, what is that? My friend got a job at American Eagle and he's like, I don't know, but I'm going to go to Pittsburgh to be a merchant. I'm like, cool. Turns out Purdue had a retail management program. So I ultimately switched into retail management, and I was doing interns out in San Francisco. So I knew that I was going to go to San Francisco. And my first career, my first chapter, and I will say that I'm one that is a perfect example of you just don't know what's going to happen when you leave school, was being a merchant at Levi's and building denim and traveling to Cambodia to make the denim and to make woven shirts. And then weirdly enough, my friend was like, hey, you love to travel and you love to write. We're starting a newsletter at Hotwire. Would you like to join? I was like, sure. It seemed like the right thing to do in 2008. So I went .com and I was in online travel for about 6 years. And then fast forward to 2013, the same friend that told me about merchandising in college was working at Levi's, or I'm sorry, was working at Old Navy, and he said, there's a recruiting job there. Don't know what it is, but there's 8 bullet points below, and 7 of them are you, and the only one that's not you is recruiting. So 3 weeks later, I was in recruiting at Old Navy. That's how I got called to the Academy of Art. So again, you never know what's going to happen when you leave here, and just one of the things we'll talk about is just be open. I also have Portugal on here in New York. I currently live in New York, in Brooklyn. I've done a couple stints there. I went to work for Gap while I was at Gap Inc. And so that moved me to New York the first time, and COVID happened. I hit the road, and during that time on the road, I spent a lot of time in Portugal, and that's ultimately my dream, is to live in Portugal. So I think it's like nice just to see where I'm from. And then you can see over here the brands I've worked with: Old Navy and Gap at Gap Inc. And then most recently, I was doing a long-term consulting project with J.Crew and Madewell, specializing, and I guess I didn't say what I do in recruiting. I mainly focus on creative design and products. So merchandisers, everything production, from R&D and tech design to overall production to design, print to graphics, apparel, performance, anything you think of about the creation of the product, and then merchandising and creative marketing. And then down here, also, last thing is this thing called Gap House Sessions. So I think it's also important to follow your passions, regardless of what your job is. Do your passions on the side. And I was able to help create this thing called Gap House Sessions, which was started as like a engagement, employee engagement activity. So let's have our employees come down for happy hour. We'll bring some artists in from New York. Gap was founded with records here, records in Levi's denim here in San Francisco. It's a direct connection back to the brand. Ultimately became part of their marketing program. We ended up raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for charity. We partnered on cultural heritage months to have specific artists that honored that month. And this is just one artist that was featured of the 32 shows that we ended up doing. So this was something I did that was not my day job. I just was like, this would be really cool for our culture. And then it turned into something that I couldn't imagine. All right, any questions? All right, shouldn't be much, it's about me. So now we'll get going. So I think, I love this image, and it's really hard to find a red bird that you could like easily cut out. But I think it's about like building your brand and how do you stand out? And that's especially for those about to graduate or those looking for internships. How do you stand out amongst the crowd? This is just a simple way to think about that, and it resonates with me. But so building your brand, how do you set yourself apart? Right now, as you're thinking about the next steps in your career and actually starting your career, you're going to be applying for internships, you're going to be applying for jobs, but that's just table stakes. That's just getting you into the system. Imagine a big database of people applying for that same job. So what do you do in order to set yourself apart? And we'll get to some tips and tricks later, but your story, your story is your story. Be confident about your story. When it comes time to do presentations and when you're doing your final collection and you're showing off your portfolio and there's a bunch of people like me walking around the room talking to you, it's your story. Take them on the ride. They don't know anything about you, so it's your story to share. So be confident about it, practice it, and just go with it. I think, I have friends that have, gone on to become executives of Gap Inc. When they got into the retail management program there, before they started to do the interview process, they applied for jobs at Starbucks and McDonald's and Foot Locker just to get practicing the interview. And I think that's something to think about too, is, a lot of you are working jobs while you're going to school. Hopefully some of them are in retail because that's what you're here for. And it's a good way to learn everything about it. But those interviews are similar to interviews you're going to have down the road. And I also don't like the word interview. It's the label, and we'll talk about this more, but it's a conversation. So again, it's your story. Go with it. Resume. Everybody has to have one. A lot of you coming out of school don't have a lot to put on that resume. It's a fact. But you may have internships. You may have done jobs. So how can you, on a piece of paper, doesn't have to be one page. Probably going to be one page for those coming out of school. But how do you tell your story with that? Because think about someone like me. A recruiter is going to have, a minute to look at your stuff digitally and online. They're going to look at your resume real quick. Okay, great. They're gonna go to your LinkedIn. Do you have a LinkedIn? You should have a LinkedIn by now. It's an important place that we're gonna hit on a lot later, so I won't go there now. But it is another part of your story. Obviously, your portfolio is a big part of your story. I think you guys are very lucky to live in the world in the age of technology where you can have 15 different portfolios. You can have your portfolio you're gonna show in real life on a table to recruiters during, the job fair / portfolio review at the end in 3 months from now. And you're also gonna have digital portfolios, but they can be numerously created to highlight a certain thing and be specific and tailor it to a certain job that you're applying for. Don't think that you have to have one portfolio and that's it. I like to say that your highlight reel of a portfolio should be a quick hit, this is who I am, these are my favorite projects, and that the person can immediately in that 45 seconds get a good sense of is this person the person we should talk to next? So what that looks like is maybe it's 3 projects. It's obviously going to be your final collection because you worked a lot on that and it should be something you're proud of. Maybe it has a project in there that you did for a commercial brand. Say, I know that you guys partner with Gap Inc. So maybe it's the project you did for them. Now it shows that you have answered a brief from a company. And then maybe it's your other favorite project from school. And so in that 45 seconds that I've scrolled through and looked at your project really quickly without you being there, I now get a sense of your style. And in that too, I want to see your thought process. So maybe one of the projects has your concept page, your colors, your fabrics, but also your sketches and your thought process to get to your final collection. That should be one of the parts of your highlight portfolio. And then you can have a portfolio that's centered around print and kids, or a portfolio that's centered around performance that you did. Don't be afraid to tailor it based on what the role is. I think sometimes people send me a portfolio that's 100 pages. I'm not going to get past 20. It's just not going to happen. So shrink it down, have your one main that's your highlight, your entry to the building type of one, and then have your tailored ones after that. Go ahead.
But you were saying when you're leaving school, you don't have a lot to put on there. But say there's things you did while you were at school, like say traveling abroad, or are those things that somebody you would take into consideration where you go off and take risks?
The question was putting personalized things on your resume. No, I think that's a great way to put it. I love that stuff. At the bottom of my resume, I think I have it, a resume. I don't know if I have a resume right now. I do put personal things that I like to do. And if you went and traveled abroad, I personally did a 12-week backpacking trip between my senior year and my last semester. It changed my life. I'm from that point on, I was never the same person again. And if I was you in your shoes and you did something like that, I would love to know that, because you went and lived your life and learned so much by putting yourself in places that weren't your comfort zone. Because when you go to work for your first job, or if you go to a new job, you're not in your comfort zone. So I think it's very important to have that. And again, if you started a lawn mowing company, that shows you're entrepreneurial and that you push and you have a desire to work and push toward your goal by making money by doing lawn. I want to know that. That's cool. Because again, you don't want to just put stuff and fluff on your resume that doesn't matter. Question?
What tips do you have on practicing your story, and then also how do you wrap everything all up in?
Well, I think, and I'm going to say this probably a lot, is precise and concise. Your story, you can practice anywhere. You can practice with your family, you can practice with your friends. I'm sure you're going to have interview training classes here. If not, I'm happy to come and do some of those. So any chance you get, and if you are currently working a job, ask your manager if you can sit in on interviews and just to observe that conversation, that dialogue, then you'll get some insights on okay, I don't want to do that. I like what they did there. But yeah, any chance you can to tell your story, even if you're just sitting in front of your phone and recording, that's easy. So yeah, but just keeping it to these are the things that I want to share about myself. And then when they ask questions, I can elaborate or I can add to. Gary.
Is there anything you shouldn't include on your resume?
Shouldn't include. I mean, as you go through your career, you're gonna have more things to add. So certain roles and certain things that you did in the past may not be relevant to this next job. So if you're applying for a designer role, but this job was, you were a barista at Starbucks. I was a barista at Starbucks. It was a great job. I learned a lot and I actually loved it. I don't need to put that on my resume because it doesn't pertain to what I'm doing. If I don't have a lot to put on there, I want to show that I worked during college, that I wasn't just like, I want to see that because I know that you're hustling and that you're going to work hard when you get in there. So it just depends on the situation and like how much meat you have to put on the piece of paper, versus like just fluffing it up just to have stuff on it.
I have two questions. So one is, what are your biggest pet peeves about resumes? And what is the one thing that catches your eye? Like, do you look at the about me portion, or like if you see like a big paragraph, you're like, all right, I'm not gonna read that. Or
So the question was, I'm gonna try to repeat the questions to the audience at home. Pet peeves about resumes. I don't like receiving paper resumes. So if I meet people for coffee, they can email that to me later. I'm big on like paper usage and like waste. So that's one thing that I dislike. I'm like, you can keep this and give it to somebody else. Obviously, you're gonna need it and you should during your time of building your business cards and paper. It's part of the training, but we live in a digital world. Just email that to me later. So that's probably my easiest pet peeve. I think again, like the fluff and adding stuff that doesn't matter. You don't need to tell me your whole story about your job. Bullet points. Bullet points, highlights, that's all you need. You don't need to tell me everything because what's going to happen is I don't even want the resume in front of me because I want you to tell me your story. How you communicate to me is how you're going to communicate on the job. And as a designer or any type of role you're in, retail or fashion or any job, it's all about communication. As a designer, you're selling your ideas to the merchants. The merchants are then taking that and telling the whole business this is what we're moving forward with. They're selling to inventory management. We believe in this product, so let's put a lot of units behind this product. So communicating is selling. And as a designer, you are painting a picture with your work, but also with your words as you present. So what I'm looking for when I'm having a conversation with you is how you carry yourself and how you communicate with me. Because that's going to translate later. I'm sorry.
how do you avoid telephone effect?
In what regard?
Because if you're communicating something to someone and they transfer that information to someone else, eventually that will be watered down.
I mean, you can't control what you can't control. So I think best to not stress on what you can't control. And there is always going to be the telephone game because I listened to you talk. I took down some notes later. I'm sharing this highlight of it. So, but you can't control that. So don't stress about that.
Okay.
Like be as confident as you can in your story and carry yourself the way that you feel like you communicated your story to me. That's all you can control. Any question?
You were talking about like things you did that earlier, but you're talking about that. It made me think about like, what if you're a person who like had kids in between school and like homeschooled them while doing things like, how would that translate like on a resume, or would you even add that to a resume?
I mean, that's tricky because it's your personal life. And I think a recruiter is going to ask you, what were you doing during this time? And that's a story for you to share or not share. But as a recruiter and as a human being, if you told me the story that you stayed back to homeschool your kids, that's a great story. It's part of life and you're being a good parent. So I don't think you necessarily need it on your resume, but be prepared to talk to it because people look at the breaks, and again, like earlier you asked a question about traveling. It's like, well, maybe you went and lived abroad for 3 months and that's why you weren't working. Well, that's amazing. I'm sure you weren't at the time. This is good. I like this. I'm talking. Another question.
Earlier, you spoke on being from Indiana and being a small town and going to San Francisco very earlier and being sparked. When you got that spark, was it a creative spark that told you that kind of led you into fashion, or did you pick up fashion when you were in Indiana to lead you on the road?
Well, I mentioned earlier, I have a lot. Most of my siblings are 8 to 11 years older. Actually, all of them, I should say. They all are 8 to 11 years older. So I kind of grew up, in the 80s with this. I was watching MTV as a 5-year-old.
Gotcha.
And I was going out with my brother on skateboarding adventures when I was riding my bike behind him. And my brother's the one that introduced me to San Francisco. I think I definitely fell in love with fashion when I came out here to California. I would spend all of my money. My mom is watching this. I would save my lunch money and I would make my own food and I'd keep all that cash. When I came to San Francisco, all my money would go to the thrift stores. And this is when thrift stores were thrift stores. It wasn't like you're paying extra money because it's a thrift store now. So I would go buy a bag in Chinatown, load it up with all these clothes and go back to Indiana to my small high school wearing all this stuff. So my brother worked for a magazine that came with a lot of free clothes. And I was just wearing this crazy stuff. So that's what kind of triggered me. And I always worked in retail. So I always loved the clothing aspect of it. I had no idea how these clothes got here. I didn't even care until I knew there was this thing called merchandising. That people actually are working on this stuff into the stores. So yeah, it kind of definitely California opened my eyes to it.
We had a question from the online attendees. Victoria is asking, being in fashion design, is military experience, including combat tours, relevant for a resume? Or should I stick to overseas countries where I experienced living on the economy, not on a military installation?
If you were in the military, so the question was around being in the military, including that in your resume, you should always include that. That's amazing. And you're doing, a service for your country that everybody in this room and we owe something to you. Always include that. I would say list the countries you were in because that also adds to your experience, but definitely that should be included. And it's a question that always comes up on a application anyways. So it's not like they're not going to find out, but that's a story you should be happy and proud of that you did. So definitely. And the fact that you are taking the discipline that comes with being in the military to bringing it to the world of fashion, which needs a lot more discipline, is a pretty incredible attribute to have and to offer. So I think that's pretty amazing. And I know military people that I've both hired and I've interviewed that are in the game, very big companies. So that's something to be added to. And so just keep moving on. This is great questions though. Social. So I'm going to continue to say this. LinkedIn. There's some students here that I talked to the other day, and LinkedIn is your friend. It's something that when I started recruiting 11 years ago, a lot of creatives weren't on. And I had to figure out a way how to get a hold of them. Fast forward now, everybody's on it. And what happened was you have Instagram over here and you have LinkedIn here. They kind of smashed Facebook. Instagram now you can message on, LinkedIn added Messenger. LinkedIn has a news feed, Instagram has its feed. So it's such a good way to learn about what's going on. And the more people you follow, the more news you're going to have just within that. And the more people that you can share your news with. So every time you share and engage with this thing, it gives back to you by people seeing it and engaging with you. It's also a place to connect. And we'll continue to talk about this as we go, but having a presence on LinkedIn is crucial. And people like me, that's where they find you. And you may have applied for a job. I may find you on LinkedIn, not even know you applied for the job because I didn't even look at the database. But I saw your profile and I was like, this is a great profile. So definitely make yourself comfortable with LinkedIn and use it. And think of it as your second resume. It doesn't need to have the robust intel and info that you have on your resume. Some highlights are nice, but it should tell your story just like a resume, because as a recruiter, I'm going to go to that. If someone tells me about you, first thing I go is LinkedIn. And how you are playing on there, it will help you. It will only help you. And we'll talk more about that. Instagram. So we all have Instagram accounts. Do not think that your employers or soon to be employers or potential employers don't look at your Instagram. So I highly recommend, as you're going through the world of applying for jobs, probably when you have the job, is to have a private Instagram, unless you don't care what's on there and you're happy with it. But if you have some risque things, you will be evaluated on your Instagram, whether you know it or not. And it's sad but true. So be very smart about it and have a personal one and then have your professional one. I would highly encourage you to have a professional one because you can put that on your resume. It's another line on your resume. It takes up another space in your resume to say, here's my Instagram. And I'm proud of it. So think about that it can be used against you just like TikTok can be. It is something now that employers or hiring managers are doing, whether it's good or bad. They're like, oh, you're interviewing for a stylist role. Oh, let's go to Instagram. I don't like their Instagram. Why would they be good? Their portfolio is amazing, but their Instagram's terrible. And then you're no longer a candidate. And that's sucks, but it's true.
Mhm.
So be really smart about your social media and be thoughtful about leveraging LinkedIn in every which way, which we'll talk about more. But also your social media that is like something that you have fun with, but know that it could hurt you too. Question in the back.
I'll be okay, me too though. Yeah, I'll come over to it.
Okay. Cover letter, and I love this question when there's professors in the room. I do not like cover letters. I think it's a great part of training how to tell your story, so you need to learn how to do a cover letter, but you need to make it unique. Cover letters are often like required to apply for a job, so you have to have something, but you don't know the job. So you telling me that you're perfect for this job is not something that's gonna actually turn me off because you don't know the job. So how do you know you're perfect for it? Also, everybody's hardworking. Everybody's gonna give 110%. So what do you do with this cover letter that makes it personalized and unique? I'd rather know about your life. I'd rather know that, you know, after traveling the world for this and homeschooling my kids, you know, now I'm in fashion school and I want to do this and I want to work for a company that has these values. That's what I want to hear. And I don't want to just hear you telling me what makes you great at this job when you haven't done the job. So just be thoughtful and make it unique and leverage it as another part when you're here to learn how to tell your story, but it needs to be personalized, it needs to be unique. So cover letters, good times.
How do you feel about following, like, when people apply to LinkedIn and you open, you read, you mark them, you like them or not, and then they follow up after 2 days? Do you like people that do that, or do you like?
I think you should always follow up. So perfect transition into the power of networking. On LinkedIn, so you go and apply for a job, it's like setting yourself apart. The first thing you should do after applying for that job is to go find the people that do that job or that did that job. So say you're applying for an assistant designer job, go find someone that's a designer. Because they have done that job, and if you go and send them an invite to connect and you write them a note, hey, Joe, I would love to connect for a coffee. I've actually applied for a job that you were once in, and I would love to take 15 minutes of your time just to learn more about it. If they accept your invite to connect, you have their email. And as I tell my teams too, get off of LinkedIn, take that email that sits in their contact info part and write them a note. And so if they've said, yes, I would love to grab a coffee, awesome. Follow up with an email, find time for that, and have a coffee, and then follow up with them again to thank them. And by the way, the job that we talked about, I've applied for it. Here's my resume, here's my portfolio. Thank you for sharing it with the hiring manager or HR recruiter. So that's something you should do immediately after applying for a job, because all you're trying to do is get in the door. If you just apply for the job and hope for the best, you're just in the system and you may never hear back. So go find those people, write them a nice little note, invite them to coffee. They're here in San Francisco. Invite them for a virtual coffee just to talk, 15 minutes. Even better, they're an alumni from the Academy of Art. Like, they want to help you. They want to give back because they were once sitting here literally in the same seats, and they want to help their fellow alumni. So leverage those. When you go and you see a role at Ralph Lauren, go online and see who works there. Look, Academy of Art, you can see, connect with them first and foremost, whether they're in that role or not. Go find your alumni, because they were once here and they once went through the same thing. So we've covered two of the things already. But again, LinkedIn and social media, don't underestimate it. It really is a powerful tool, and you're very lucky to have it today. It really is changed the world. I remember when I was starting out recruiting, LinkedIn was small. I mean, they were a small company, and now they're one of the biggest companies in the world because they connect the world. And you can get jobs across the world by connecting with people on LinkedIn. I've hired so many people from abroad over the years that I reached out to on LinkedIn to say, hey, we'd love to chat. The next thing you know, they're moving their families over to California. So it does connect. It's a very powerful tool. And then presentations and job fairs, like what you're sitting in right now, go to them. You guys have a huge series coming your way this semester between now and the end of the school year. Go to every single one and tell your friends to go, because I'm up here. I'm a recruiter. If you're not connecting with me on LinkedIn after this, which you'd be surprised, like nobody ever does, it's crazy. Like, you have access to me and all of my connections. So come to these, say hello to the person, introduce them. Because then when you talk to me on LinkedIn, I can put a face with a name. But go to all of them, go to all the job fairs. Also, a tip at job fair, when you're walking around and you see someone sitting there from American Eagle, you can see their name tag. You can go on LinkedIn and then you can come back and say, oh, we're both from Indiana. And now you're in. You have a connection. And that's so easy. We didn't have that before. We had to like ask a lot of questions. Now you have that. You can literally walk by, survey the table, and then do your research and then find some weird connection. Oh, you went to this school? I also went to a Big Ten school. And it's like, oh, now we're connected. Question?
Yeah, LinkedIn jobs versus Glassdoor, Indeed. What's your opinion on that?
So they're all aggregators. So the question is like LinkedIn versus Indeed and all the other job sites. They are paying money to have, our companies are paying money to be on them. They are also paying money to be connected back to these companies. I always say, if you see a job on any of those sites, LinkedIn, Indeed, Monster, Glassdoor, immediately go to the company's website and see if it's still live, because it might be delayed and it might not be accurate. So you might be getting your hopes up about a job that doesn't exist. So always go to the career site of the company. Also, go to the page on LinkedIn of the company. They pay tens of thousands of dollars a year to make their LinkedIn look pretty and to add all their content that they do. So you get a good site. Then go to their career site. They want to sell you on why you want to work here. So you're doing your research and you're getting to know the company, their values, who are their leaders? Do they have diversity like in their leadership teams? Like what do they stand behind? Because like you can tell a lot from these company websites, whether they like it or not. And so, but yeah, they're all aggregates of the same thing in a way, and all they want is clicks. So, but just go back to the career site and look for that job at the company, because it will be up to date.
Even cross-reference like LinkedIn jobs to the.
Well, again, if it's not on the career site of the company, it's not a job, because it's going to be there before it goes to LinkedIn. It's like LinkedIn and like companies pay money to post their jobs on LinkedIn. So they will pay extra money to be on the top of the list, to be highlighted when you do a search for a job. But also on LinkedIn, when you're looking for jobs, go on there and set up all the filters so that you're getting daily emails about jobs out in the market. The place you want to be, the kind of companies you want for the job. Like if it's a assistant designer, just put assistant designer and you will get a list every day at like 7 o'clock that says, here are all the jobs. And then there'll be 60 more waiting for you when you click on the page or similar jobs to it. Question.
Now, it seems like communication with like your peers and other people that are doing in the same career fields that you're doing is important, because it seems like a lot of jobs that you have gotten have been word of mouth through your friend. So I take it that when you have associates that are in the business, it kind of helps you also when it comes to jobs. So a lot of jobs that you got, did they even get on the career site that you know of?
They didn't have career sites.
They didn't have, but yeah.
They made them. No, I mean, again, that's the power of networking.
Gotcha.
Whether it's your friends today or your friends tomorrow, you will get more jobs through those that you have connected with, or that they are connected to someone else than you will just by applying. That is just, it's the old adage of like, who you know, not what you know. It's very true, because until you get in that door, they don't know what you know. And so how you get in that door, that person that tells you or gets you in the door, they can't get you the job. You got to get that yourself. Like you have to do the work, you have to do the interviews, you have to do the projects, but they can help you get in there. And also you can leverage them to help you get it. So again, like if you connect with me on LinkedIn, now you're connected to my secondary connections of 14,000 people. And I'm somewhat connected to probably someone at that job. And you could come to me and say, hey, I saw this job. Would love it if you could like pass along my information. You know, I'm not going to necessarily always make an introduction to someone directly, but I can share your stuff and put you on top of the pile and say, hey, I'm an advisor at the Academy of Art. This person's great, you know, showed a lot of good energy, has some great work. Check out their work. That's all I can do. And if they're like, this is awesome, and you get the conversation, then it's all on you. So yeah, it definitely, the power of networking is just that. And that's why I try to like show like all these social medias, but your friends will help you later, and then you will do it back and pay it forward later. And that's part of the game. It's like, I'm very fortunate to have been where I've been because of people helping me get in the door. And now I'm doing that same thing, weirdly enough. Like I had really bad recruiting experiences when I was in online travel. I moved to New York, 2010, terrible time to move to New York, end of the recession. And I'm like, oh, I'll go to New York and I'll get a job. I lost jobs because of bad recruiters that didn't follow up with me, recruiters that left me hanging. You know, I had a contract gig that was gonna be great to get me through the next 6 months, but I really wanted this job at Thompson Hotels. Well, I didn't hear back from the recruiter. And then next thing you know, by the time I do, and I'm not the candidate for them, I go back here and they're like, sorry, we're not actually gonna do a contract role for that. And so I didn't know then I was gonna be a recruiter, but 3 years after that experience, I was like, I will follow up. I will get back to you because, and it's okay for you to follow up with recruiters because they owe you that. If you go through an interview process and don't hear from them in a while, check in. So, but yeah, it's all full circle and it all comes around. So today being helped, tomorrow you help. But again, power of network.
Do you recommend posting on LinkedIn, like being active?
Very much so, because the more active you are, the more you're gonna pop up to people's feeds. So if you're posting, again, be genuine, post things that you're excited about. If you're working on your final project or you're showing your collection, post it on LinkedIn. Why wouldn't you? Because it's gonna fall into people you've connected with. They're gonna see it. And they may share it or they may see it and then have that much more to share with someone to maybe help you. Post on LinkedIn, use social media to your advantage. Post on Instagram, post on LinkedIn, comment on people. It's like the more active you are on LinkedIn, there is an algorithm that's going to help you go up and bubble up. And you're going to pop up more on those people's pages that you're connected to, just like on Instagram. It's the same. So leverage it for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, that's
How much is a good time window to reach out to a recruiter if they're not responding?
so, you know, think about like there's always things going on behind the scenes that you have no idea about. So, and the recruiter is just, they're the facilitator. They don't control the business. They don't control that some people are on vacation. You know, they can't make magic happen. You don't want to like harass them. You want to believe that they have like the best interest and they will get back to you. I think depending on which stage you're at in the process, you know, if you just met with them and you just met with a recruiter and they're like, we'll get back to you, you know, give it a couple weeks.
Couple weeks.
And it's doesn't hurt to follow up. If you are gone through the interview process and you're like a final candidate, you present a project and you don't hear back within a week, definitely follow up. But otherwise, early in the stages, give it a couple weeks and just know that like there is so much going on in their world that they can't control. And that they could also write you back and say that, but that they are too trying to sort through because recruiters don't want to have a bunch of roles they're working on. They want, like anything else, to knock that thing off their checklist and move to the next role. Recruiters also don't want to hire someone that's going to leave in 6 months or get let go in a year and then they have to do that role over again. So I was telling you guys the other day in class, like, I'm not hiring you for today's role. I'm hiring you for you to grow within roles at the company. I hire you as assistant designer today. I'm hiring you because I think you could be a designer. You're going to be promoted a couple of times here. And you're going to be with us. You're going to train here. So think that like this role today is just the start because I don't want to work on this role again for at least a couple of years. But so they do want to get back to you genuinely, I hope, but it doesn't hurt to follow up because, you know, you're trying to move and do your thing too. So it's out of all respect. But yeah, I've been hit by that and it hurts. Oh, wrong one. Okay, interviewing. So first thing is don't call it an interview. That word just adds a lot of pressure. It like just makes you think, it makes you sweat. It's a conversation. It's another human being. They wanted to learn better about you and you want to learn more about the company. So if you can just get the word interviewing out of your head, and then I'm having a conversation with this brand, I'm talking to this brand, I'm talking to them about this role, it will make you feel more comfortable in that setting because again, you're just having a conversation with someone. And your whole thing is sharing your story. And again, it's your story. So be confident about it. And then be prepared to answer their questions. Do your research. Like know your audience. Like who am I talking to? Okay, I'm talking to a recruiter. Some recruiters know more than others about the role. Some recruiters are in it. They go to the meetings. They know what's going on in design. They know what's going on in merchandising. Other recruiters are literally reading off a job description that you also are reading off of online. And they may go more robotic. Don't let their energy impact your energy. It's easier said than done. But if someone is a robot and you get the sense they don't know what they're talking about, that's a good sign that that company is probably not a place you want to work. Because you hire recruiters to be your front line. And if your first interaction with a company is with a robot, then it's probably not going to be a great experience to work for them. You want a recruiter that knows what they're talking about, can speak to your questions. If they don't know the answer, which they may not, just honestly just say, I need to figure that out. I'd like to know that too. But just always think like the recruiting experience, the candidate experience, they didn't get back to me. That company put that person in that role. So the head of recruiting thought this person would be good to represent their company. That's a good sign that the company might not be a great place to work. But go in there with questions. Question to not ask, what's a typical day like here or in this role? In fashion and work in general, unless you were working on a factory line, which nothing about that, but you are doing something specifically, that's your job. In fashion, you have a different job every day. So don't ask that question because it's an impossible answer. And what they'll say is every day is different. And then the conversation goes nowhere. So ask more detailed questions, like get into their values, ask about their leaders. Who's the head of design? And if you haven't researched and figured that out, ask that question because they're the leader of design. They're setting the tone for your future there. But make sure your questions are open-ended unless you need to just ask a question. Don't ask, is this a 9-to-5 job or how much vacation time do we get? That stuff will come later, but nobody wants to know that you're looking to get out of here at 5 o'clock because as an entry-level person, you want to stay until everybody else is last. You want to be first in, last out. That will set you up for so much success when someone walks in. They see you sitting there, they're a hard worker. That's just what they think. You might not be doing anything, but you're there. And then if you're the last one there, you're learning and seeing how people are operating. You're hearing conversations post-meeting because a lot of the things that go down in offices are happening after meetings, after the day of meetings. That's when things are happening. You're going to hear things in the bathroom. You're going to hear things in like the open office area, people talking about the day. You're going to learn so much that like nobody wants to be asked like, do people leave here at 5 o'clock every day? Like, that's not a good question. Granted, you may have things that you need to do from your personal life, but don't ask that. That's something you work out later when you get the job and you talk to your manager about, I have childcare until this time. The other days of the week, I will be here till 10 o'clock. I will do whatever, obviously you don't want that kind of quality of life, but you asking me how long or what's the normal day look like, timing wise, I'm just like, well, they don't want to be here. And you should want to be there because the more you're there, the more you'll learn. Question.
Are you allowed to ask what the turnover in the positions is?
Yeah, I think it's like, you can ask, why is this role open? They can say, oh, we added more assistant designer roles because we're growing. Great answer. Now you know the business is successful. Or actually the person in this role got promoted to associate designer. Great. That means there's growth. So you can definitely ask. So because it's like, are you adding positions or did someone get promoted? They probably won't say we let someone go.
Massive.
But the question is just fair to you say, you can just say, what's it look like for like growth here? What's growth look like in this company? If they can't answer that, that's bad because then they're like, there is no growth. So you also don't want to say, how long is it going to take before I get promoted? That's on you. Don't ask that. People do ask that. It's like, I think, and even more so in today's world, like people expect to be promoted for just doing the job. You don't get promoted for doing the job. You get promoted for doing the next job. And once you're doing that next job and you're showing up, then you get promoted into that job. So there is no timeline on promotion. That's all in the person and the company. And asking about growth here, is there flexibility to move around? Like, at Old Navy, you could start in baby design, but you could be in women's design 2 years from now. And you can move. And so you want to work at places that either have multiple brands or multiple functions because there's more room to go this way. You might not move up in a promotion and go to the women's, but you may move laterally over and then you can go this way. So I think it's just like asking questions like that to get a sense of like growth and movement here.
AI is a big topic right now. So my question is there certain qualifications that you're looking for? Because you're hiring for a person who's gonna grow within the company is gonna do several. So I'm guessing there's some people that are getting hired right now, they're getting hired to someday filling an AI position. But I don't know what those are.
I mean, we don't know. AI's here, it's here to stay. It's been with us for a long time. We just haven't talked about it as much as we do now. And honestly, this generation knows more about AI than the people that are hiring you.
Yeah.
And so you can actually, the more you know about it and how to use it, the better you will be. So there's gonna be this in the next slide, but like, use it, leverage it, but know there's a lot of work still to be done. It can help you get to a place, can help you get started, but your human aspect to creativity cannot be done by a machine. So you can't predict the future. So again, it's what you can't control, don't stress.
Okay.
It's something for you. Can't control it, don't stress about it. Easier said than done, but you can't control what's gonna happen in technology unless you're working in it. But it's gonna be here and it's gonna stay. Right now, many brands are moving to digital design. So like, they are leveraging digital aspects, digital technology for tech design. It's helping, it's aiding, but it's not replacing. Will there be some roles down the line get replaced? Yes, because that's just where we are. But creativity from a human cannot be replaced. And so leverage AI where you can, but know that that's just the start and that you have to finish it, you have to do the work. Question.
So like back to, we'll say like talk about your story. Do you talk about like failures or is it something like you should absolutely do?
No, I think if it's a part of your story and that, say you had an internship and there were certain aspects of it that you learned, like through whether you witnessed it by other people not doing well, or you made some mistakes, like every great leader and every successful business person in the world talks about failure is how you learn. You don't learn from success. Like you can chart it, you can graph it and say, okay, we're doing well here, let's keep going. But making mistakes and making mistakes fast and learning from it, if you continue to make the same mistake over and over again, that's a problem. But if you learn from something, and you oftentimes will get asked that question, what is one time that you failed or something didn't go right? What did you learn from it? And what did you do the next time? Be prepared to have that story. I think it's fair. And I think, again, I have failed many times in my career, but it's a learning. And we make mistakes, we learn from it. And managers know that, and managers made mistakes too. When it comes to like a consistent thing, then it's like, that's what's going on here, why can't this stick? But have that story, because failure is learning. Failure is common and it happens every day, and we wouldn't be where we are in the world if we didn't fail it. How many times did they fail creating this certain thing, AI? All the time. And then it worked. How many companies did this successful? I don't want to mention names because then I think they're polarizing, but like these leaders that are changing the world, they failed a ton. The computer wouldn't be here without failure. So don't be afraid of it, and don't be afraid to make mistakes, because then you get cautious and you're not being creative. You're not pushing yourself. That helps. Yeah.
When you're talking to somebody, could you tell that they're just trying to be like I guess I'm perfect versus like honest and like, you know what I mean? Is it something you read off them?
Different people read people differently.
Yeah.
Like I do it for a living. So for me, and I learned this by trying to fit myself in, like when I moved back to California after failing in New York, I didn't even last a year there. I had some bad breaks. I did have a job, but I moved back to California. What was happening is I was trying to scramble to get a job, as I was trying to put myself in a box. That wasn't me. I was just trying to be whatever person you want me to be so I can get a job and make some money. And I wasn't being genuine. And I actually did a mock interview one time with my brother, who, again, 10 years older than me. He's managed big teams before. So we did an interview and he's like, I'm not your brother. So we went through it. He's like, stop trying to be something you're not. Because at the end of the day, I, as a hiring manager, want to hire someone that I'm going to spend 40 to 50, 60 hours a week with. I'm going to have lunch with. I'm going to have a drink with after work. Obviously, you need to have the skills and be talented, but I'm hiring you as also a person. So be yourself. And if it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit. And what we get caught up in is trying to be something we're not. Then you're going to just be looking for a new job in 6 months anyways, because you just tried to put yourself into. So just be who you are, and just showcase what you're good at, how you want to work, why you're excited about this role. That's something that I'm going to take in is like, this is a genuinely good person who has the skills to do this job. They should move forward for the next round. But yeah, don't put yourself in a box that's not you, because you're just going to be doing this whole search again. I learned that first.
Although, be careful with that. I interviewed somebody for a job yesterday, and after 5 minutes into, I asked him a question about why is he changing jobs, and he said, because my wife just killed herself, shot herself in the head. The interview was over. I mean, I just could not.
Again, that's extreme. That's not like funny, but that's extreme. I think there is a balance of like personal versus professional in an interview. You want to highlight like who you are, but something like that's impossible to recover from, and they're not ready to be interviewed.
I did not recover.
I always tell people that have just recently been let go to like take a break, because you've got to go through the grieving process to get to the place that you're actually good in a well-being, comfortable spot to go out and interview again. Because it can be picked up on that the desperation, the sadness that you haven't recovered from, like you need it's a balance. It's a balance. So like you do want to share who you are and the experience you've had on the personal side, but it's a professional setting and there are HR limitations to what, and restrictions to what can happen in a job. So I think when you work with people, it's different than when you're interviewing people, so. And you're gonna maybe have the same conversation. I talk to people that I've been talking to for 7 years. I've not hired them once for a job, but we keep trying. And eventually you might find the right role. The head of design at Athleta, I knew her for 5 years. She was at Nike, she went to Lulu, she went to Adidas in Germany. The role opened up, first call, first email, 2 months later, she signed the contract. So it's the right timing, the right fit for both parties. So you may get to know a recruiter really well, and then you might have a different relationship than you did initially. Probably not to that level still, but there is, again, relationship building and staying in touch with those recruiters are people that can help you get a job down the road. It's all about timing. It's all about the right fit. So again, we talked about a lot. This is great. We talked about a lot of stuff. But knowing your audience, do your research, tailor your portfolio if you have one. Alumni are your friends. I'm not going to say it out loud, but if you had to say it, say LinkedIn, because it's going to be great for you to prepare for an interview. You can literally go on there and research who am I interviewing with. Okay, they gave me the panel. I'm meeting with all these people. I want to know where they were. Because again, I might have a connection to them. So when I sit down in my 5th conversation of the day with the 5th person that I'm interviewing with, I remember that they are from Ohio and I'm also from Ohio, and great. So when they sit down, they're like, oh, I saw from Ohio, you worked at Abercrombie. I'm from Columbus, Ohio too. Now the tension's broken. And now you guys can talk and it'll be a much different conversation. So LinkedIn is not only to find jobs and do research, but when you get that interview, do your research on the people so that you're not going in blind. So, because they're doing the same with you, they're going to your LinkedIn. So that's great that we've covered all this stuff. Okay, so this is some tips and tricks. Again, I believe saying things over and over again. But this one we haven't talked about is just be open and get in the door. I talked about this in the class the other day. I can't tell you how many people I hired at Old Navy that started as coordinators in the visual merchandising closet. Like literally sample coordinators. Those people are in the door. They may have a design degree. Well, visual merchants are hanging out with designers in the showroom all the time. They hear what roles open up. Oh, there's an assistant designer role open? Great. They already know Old Navy. We're familiar with them. We know how they work. That's an easy hire. They got in the door to do a sample coordinator role, which they didn't study, they didn't get a degree in, but they're in the door. And they also get to see everything going on because you're running around with samples. So get in the door. If you are a women's wear designer or a merchandiser and there's a product development role open, trust me, go for that role. Because great designers have to do product development anyways, and oftentimes do both. But you can get into the product development role and then liaison yourself and move over to the design down the road because you're getting to know those teams. They like you. Who's the first person they're going to say? Because it costs money to go outside and recruit. because you gotta pay for recruiters, and you gotta go have coffees and expenses and all these things you have to do. It's taking time out of people to do interview panels when we have someone right here. They're the coordinator that we all love, and they work their ass off. So why wouldn't we take them, or at least give them a chance first? Because that saves us a lot of time and a lot of money. So get the door, whatever it takes. It's a baby designer will open, take it, because adult trend and children's trend is the same trend. It comes from the same place. It just differentiates itself when it gets to print and color. You can add more to baby, but it's the same trend out there. It's just filtered down into baby. And that's literally, and then again, if you're working in baby girls, you may work in women someday. So get the door. AI, we talked about this. Great question. Again, it can only do so much. It can do everything, but then what's that? So just really like leverage it to help, be efficient with it, but know there's a lot of work to be done. Alumni are your friends. Be confident, it's your story. And also like while you're studying this, like why not work in retail? Because there is so much to learn by working in a retail store. And my girlfriend's a perfect example of this. She went to school at North Carolina State, worked at Michael Kors in the store. Well, who comes to the stores? People from headquarters. So people from headquarters coming in the store, she meets them. She gets a summer internship in New York City at Michael Kors. She's now a VP running merchandising for handbags at Michael Kors. She's like the perfect LinkedIn story. She literally went from store associate to VP. But she started in the stores. I remember working at Abercrombie, or I worked at Hollister, but they sent us to an Abercrombie in Indiana because the CEO of the company was coming to town. I got to meet this guy. And like, you know, not that I, whatever, but he was there. And like, you constantly have leaders coming through that you get that exposure, but you learn all the pieces just by being in the store, whether you know it or not, that goes into this. You have the visual merchandising aspect, great training for product. You have the customer interaction. The biggest thing about being in product is knowing the customer, because that's who you're selling to. So when you are standing on the floor and you're folding clothes, that person, everybody seems to be going over to that black sweatshirt. There's something to that. So you're getting reads. So if and when you get a chance, take a retail job. Even if you graduate, go into retail. There's careers to be had in the store world. I learned that when I was at Gap Inc. I led the store's visual and recruiting team for North America. So I went to all these stores. People grow their careers in the store world. You can go up to be an SVP of stores and you run the whole thing. There's lucrative careers of being a district manager and a regional director. So even if you haven't worked in retail now, while you go out to interview for full-time jobs, I worked at Starbucks and Steve Madden while I was interviewing at Levi's. And, you know, quite the combo, but I did it, but I learned a lot. And so just know that that's a world that you should leverage because it will only help. And then this is really important as like a LinkedIn, maybe I said it too much. But you won't forget it, and I'll edit that later. But this is big for me as a recruiter. And anybody that you're asking to help you, make it as easy as possible for them to help you. And by that I mean, you see a role open. You contact me on LinkedIn, you say this, don't send me your resume on LinkedIn. Because if you have, and especially if I ask you, please email me your resume and your portfolio, because you're asking me to download your resume and your portfolio from LinkedIn. Now you're taking up space on my computer and like you're slowing me down, literally. So if a recruiter asks you to email it, email it. If you see a job and you contact me on LinkedIn, you say, hey, Justin, great to hang out with you the other day. I saw this job. Do you mind sharing my information with the hiring manager or anybody that you know there? I will say, I'm glad to help, but please do these things for me. In the subject line, put assistant designer at Old Navy. In the body of the email, write whatever you want about your excitement for this role. Don't say too much. And then put the link to the job from the career site. And then attach your resume and portfolio. And do that every single time. Don't expect that I save this email or I know where this email is. So the next time you write me about the job at Tommy Hilfiger, then like I'm gonna go and pull your resume from your last email and put it in. So make it as easy as possible for people to help you. Because one, you're asking them for help. And you want them to, I want to be able to just hit forward and send it along. And I'll write a nice blurb about you, or I'll say, I don't know this person really well, but they have made the initiative to reach out to me. And if you trust me, I'm sharing, but I don't have any details around them, but so just make it really easy. And I won't say the last line, we've already talked about it. It's important. It's actually a good joke, it's just there. So, so we've done a lot of Q&A, but always good to have time at the end. And notice the color theme I did here, very County of Art, that was intentional. Red, black, white, gray. So, when do I get some of the product downstairs? That stuff's really cool. I would like this sweatshirt. I actually went down there today. But any other questions or comments or concerns?
So I'm going, with the fashion department, I'm gonna go to Florence, Italy this summer. And there's a bunch of different spots that they're gonna take us to, places where they actually make,
Factories.
yeah, they make the fabrics and the velvets and all that. What are some suggestions, like if that's something you really wanna be immersed in and maybe do in the future? Like, what do you like recommend that somebody like me?
Ask all the questions you can. And find yourself next to the people that are doing the work and get to know them, because they're the ones that could potentially hire you in the future or be a mentor to you. It's not always about hiring. Mentorship is just as important as like getting a job. So get close to them, ask them questions, take pictures where you can, ask if you can first, but then take pictures, because this is all stuff that, you know, it's hard, it's gonna be overwhelming. You're gonna be jet lagged, it's gonna be a whirlwind of a trip, you're gonna see all these things, plus the sites. You're gonna go from like David to a mill, but just be curious. And if you're really passionate about it, get in the front row. Like, don't hide. Ask the questions. And that's the thing too, is like, this word keeps coming up, but show up. And by showing up there, it's like, I'm in the front row. I want to see this thing up close and personal. Can I take a picture? Can I take a video? Do it. And then as you're moving on to the next thing, find the people that are talking. You know, it's just like a tour guide with all the information. They're your tour guide. I think I was talking about this the other day with the class. It's all back there. It's coming again. You know, you guys have gone on this amazing journey. You have 3 months left for some of you, you know, and then there's people like me walking through the portfolio reviews. You're at the fashion show, and it's exciting. But what you need to be taking serious right now is when you have people like me walk in a room, it's not time to hang out with your friends. You can do that later, you can celebrate later. Focus on, because when I walk in the room, I'm looking at how people are acting, and I'm going to say like, oh, I made eye contact with you. I'm going to engage with you. I'm going to come over and look at your portfolio and spend time with you. If you guys are hanging out and chatting, like, I don't want to be a part of that conversation. I don't want to be like, hey, can I see your portfolio? You should ask me, come see my portfolio. So take it very seriously and then celebrate later. But like, if you have these moments, like we talked about earlier, show up, go to the talks, go to any kind of job fair you can, show up where you think more fashion people are going to be, you know, spend time going to stores and doing like comp trips just to see what's going on. Talk to the store associates, ask to see a manager. If you want to apply for a retail job, don't just drop your resume off. Say, is the manager here? Oh, no, they're not here today. Come back tomorrow. Because talk about telephone, like you're expecting someone to then share your information. Like, again, like you want to always be there to present your project and present yourself. And the days when it comes time in mid-May, when people like me are walking around and you have this time, a small period of time, you have 3 minutes with me, 5 minutes, like know what you're looking at, know what you're showing me in your portfolio. We talked about this the other day. It's like, you have a big portfolio. Maybe there's certain requirements you have to have in your portfolio for school. And it's not your like highlight reel of the 3 projects, but what are your favorite 3 projects? Like not only like your, obviously like your collection, and ideally you're showing that night. And I want to see on paper, and I want to see it come to life. And I want to see how you connect those 2 things. Because that's, to me, is like, wow, they can tell a story here, but then they can actually create magic here. And that could be a disconnect too. But like, take that seriously. And again, you have only this much time with me. And then think about how little time you have when you're expecting someone digitally to look at your stuff. So when I come up to you, have your 3 things that you're going to share. And again, it's your story. I'm just here for the ride. And you want to, you know, take me through the journey, but you also want to showcase why I should be interested in hiring you later. So take these moments, and like as you're wrapping things up, or even as you're, you know, if you're a junior, go to those things because I'm going to be there. And make your presence felt. Say hello to me. It doesn't hurt. And, you know, like, again, the worst thing is that we don't stay connected, but we met. but I'm on LinkedIn.
We have a question from the
My dad in Indiana. Yeah.
No, not yet, not yet. So Emma is asking. I'll let you know when it comes in. So Emma is asking, does J.Crew Madewell have design internships? I worked at Madewell as a stylist for the past 2 years and really want to continue working for the brand when I graduate.
They do. They have a summer internship program. A lot of companies, during COVID had to get away from internship programs, but most companies, not most, a lot of them coming back. So the best thing to do is to follow along on the career site and see when it pops open. They probably have started the recruiting process now. Get on their radar. And like I said earlier, go on LinkedIn and find out who their recruiters are.
Mhm.
They will say on LinkedIn, I'm a design recruiter. That means they're probably working on the internship. So her name may be Emily Dance. Message her, get to know her. Put yourself out there, show your portfolio, talk about, I work in the store. Like, that's a direct connection. That's a great story. Like my girlfriend's story. Story associate to internship to full-time role. Like, you're already in it, you already know the brand. Like, and you can take it from the customer point of view when you're in the store working with customers to then being in behind the scenes to do it. So like, you're already in. So leverage that.
I have another question from Zoom. Joseph is asking, do you have any information on job fairs upcoming?
I don't. I'm a consultant, so I work with a bunch of brands. J.Crew Madewell, I work with other companies I can't talk about because a lot of roles I do are executive search and they're not posted. So I'm not currently like at the level of working at the level of internships and job fairs and that stuff. I'm not hiring entry-level talent. I mostly do VP and above. But I did manage internship program for 4 years at Old Navy and the Creative Academy, which is the entry-level program. So the two worlds I'm most passionate about are entry-level internships and then executive. So I think that's something, again, it's all part of the research. Go on companies' websites. Like, they will post about job fairs. Job fairs happen differently these days. So they might be an online job fair. There might be a place to go where oftentimes those job fairs are going to be in the city's headquarter town. So if you can't get there or it's not easily accessible, go apply to their store. Work at that. If you really love a brand, you should go work at their store because you're going to learn so much. And again, you're going to get to learn the details. You're going to learn if they treat you well and they have a good culture in the stores, there's a good chance they have a good culture at HQ. Those things are generally connected. When companies are doing well, they generally have a good relationship between stores and HQ. So if you love a brand or you just want to get to know more about it, go work there. And if it's not for you ultimately, then, but again, you will learn a lot and you again have a chance to be exposed to leadership. And if you're a great stylist and then the leadership comes through, the visual merchandising and styling team comes through and they're like, who did this work? It was Joan. Joan's amazing. Well, Joan, you now have an internship or full-time role. So don't, again, think that working in retail is not a part of your career journey. It should be very much about it. I mean, I think, and we did this thing at Old Navy when you started back in the day, you had to go work in the store for 3 days. When you started to work there, you had to go there because it's all about the customer. And it's really refreshing and really eye-opening to see what goes on in the store, being in the stock room. And if people didn't work retail before, what goes on in stock room, it's crazy. So but when you're on the ground for 3 days and you're about to go back to headquarters after that, you have a whole new perspective on who you're trying to make product for, whether you're in product development, design, merchandising, inventory management, marketing, it all goes to the customer. It's all about the customer. So, and that's the place you can be closest to the customer.
I have another question from Zoom.
Okay.
Okay, so Patrice is wondering if there are any staffing firms dedicated to fashion professionals that you might want to recommend. Certainly they are, but
I don't know about, I mean, I think staffing firms like 24/7 does a lot of staffing, if you will. I don't like that word. It seems very robotic, but 24/7 is a good place that they do a lot of part-time hires. They do a lot of maternity leave hires. They will have a lot of jobs that other search firms don't do. Mostly at entry-level roles, the companies control that. They have a recruiting team that focuses on early levels, junior level roles, And then you have a team that focuses on director and above. So I wouldn't say that you're gonna find a dedicated site. I mean, there are, you know, I know we're trying to work on this in the United States where like all the schools come together and there is a, you know, a show and there's a thing. But there's not technically that right now in the United States. So I think it's, again, if you have brands you want to work for and there are places that you can move to or places that are in your backyard, stay on their career sites. And if they have any type of events happening and you see that on their Instagram, go to it and talk to everybody. Whether you're good at that or comfortable in that, get outside your box and go talk to them because you need to get yourself in front of them and you need to get yourself in the door. Anytime they have events, go.
And then what's one thing that you know now that you wish you knew when you started your career?
Wow, good question. I think just being open, like, you know, I wanted to be a merchant. That's what I thought I wanted to do. And I was focused on that. And I ended up, you know, doing these jobs until I got that. Once I got into it, I got exposed to production and design and marketing and every aspect that went into the creation of a pair of jeans. And I wish I was more dedicated at that time versus like post-college, like, oh, whatever. I made a lot of mistakes and like just not dropping the ball or where'd that sample go? I don't know. I wish I took that time more seriously.
Gotcha.
And I can say that it wasn't until like somehow, some way they started giving me lines to own. Like I think my first line was like outerwear. It wasn't until then where I was like, oh, this is a thing that I can make an impact on and that I'm responsible for. And before I was just kind of like just floating around good times, Charles. But also like I would just say, yeah, if you get in the door, make the most of it. Like I think that's one of my favorite things to say is make the most of it. People say take advantage of, that's a negative connotation. Make the most of it. So if you get in the door for an interview, make the most of it. You might not get that job, learn from it. And I think a lot of people take that as rejection. That's just part of it. And it might not have been the right role for you, but the more you interview, the more you get to the next round, the more confident you're going to be, the more you're going to learn. Oh, I said that thing. I should not have said it like that. Okay, now I'm ready for the next one. And so, and if, you know, and maybe you don't get that job that time with that company, but if you had a good experience with them and they had a good experience with you, you're going to be the first person they call. Again, as a recruiter, I want to work as little as possible on every role. I want to get it done. If I had a great candidate that didn't get the job last time, they're the first person I'm going to. So you don't get the role, be very respectful, say your thank yous. You're going to be on their radar. And always remember that. It's like, it's not this role always. It's about the next role. It's about tomorrow. Like the person I've hired so many people that I've known for 2, 3, 4, 5 years because we've just stayed in touch. And I had a good experience with them in our interaction when there wasn't a role. So always think about what's next and learn from that experience every time you interview.
Gotcha. So be open and then always take advantage of the opportunity.
Make the most of it.
Make the most of the opportunity. Advantages, negative points. Yeah. Gotcha.
Another question from our Zoom attendees. Nia is returning to the networking topic. When networking, what were the 3 questions we should be ready to ask? Dante, that's what you mentioned.
3 questions that you're wanting to ask while networking. One, you're inviting them to connect on LinkedIn, so that's a question. Would you accept my invite?
Okay.
So writing a personalized note will help with that. And by personalization, I mean, hi, Justin, my comments, I would love to talk to you, blah, blah, and then like, thank you, Justin. Like personalize it. I think there's a power of personalization in that. So you are one, that's your first question is like, will you accept my invite to connect? And don't take it personal if you don't hear back from them right away, because a lot of people just don't check LinkedIn as often as some people do. Second question is, do you have time for 15 minutes to talk? So you're asking them to accept you to connect, and then you're asking them, okay, do you have a moment to talk? You don't necessarily have to ask that second question in the first question, but you can bring that up later. And then the third question is, can you help me get my information to the hiring manager or to the HR people? So you've asked 3 things right there that are very simple. And then you're asking for help. Again, make it as easy as possible for them to help you. And it should be as simple as hitting the forward button. and putting someone's email.
He says, thank you. And another question from Zoom. John Soon is asking, what would be your advice for international students that need sponsorship? I guess it's for international students in the US.
I think the best thing to do is to make the most of your time here while you're here. You know, maybe back in the day, we did hire international students on a 1-year visa, and some of them we were able to get an O1 visa for later. It's a very tricky thing, and I'm always gonna be real and talk about this. There's no guarantees. You have the 1 year after school, you can do a lot with that year to learn before you go back home. And even that could be just working in stores. Like, you may not get that job at HQ because they're like, well, we're gonna invest in you for 1 year and then you're gonna go away. That's life and that's reality right now. I'm sad to say, but you have a year here. You can do so much to still learn. And again, to go back, like, working in a store can teach you so much about this world. And the people that you meet through that can help you later. So again, don't think it's about this 1 year I got. I want to make as many connections as possible here. So that way, when I reach out to them in 2 or 3 years, and maybe the visa situation is better than, maybe we open up the doors globally and people are flowing around faster and easier. Just make the most of that 1 year you have, because there are no guarantees. And some companies will take the chance. And if you're really good, they'll say, cool, we'll hire you for a year and we'll teach you everything we know. And you go back and you'll get a great job because of the experience you got. There are some companies that will do that. There are a lot of companies that won't do that. Times are different now. But if you're great and you are, you know, genuinely like hardworking, and that you are putting the effort to showcase that I want to be here and I want to grow here, you never know. And you don't know until you try. So like that 1 year, don't give up. Just make the most of it. Love all the questions. Been the most question-filled session ever.
I have another question on international careers in general, because I'm all about it. I think like surfing on that international wave is incredibly enriching, not financially, but personally altogether. Now that the question was about international students in the US, instead, can we talk more about US students or US educated students going on international careers out there?
Again, it's making those connections. You're going to Florence, talk to people, get to know them. If you're inquisitive and you're curious and they see that and you're also good at what you do, the opportunities will come. Again, we live in a world, and this is just a world where borders are real. They're more real than they've ever been before. You know, UK, for example, with Brexit, that closed down the opportunities for students to go to the United States, to Amsterdam to work for PVH, to go to Spain to work for Zara, to go to Stockholm to work for H&M, to go to Paris to work for a fashion house, because they can't go there like they used to be able to. So the borders are real. I don't have a magical answer for that, except for put yourself out there. You know, if you want to work abroad, you got 3 months when you go over there to do what you can do. Like, if you want to work in Paris, go to Paris and live for 3 months and knock on every door and get the most you can out of those 3 months. And then who knows who you'll meet, but you've got to make the most of it. You got to put yourself out there. And that's just the world we live in right now, where it used to be a much easier. I used to recruit and hire people from Europe all the time here. They're really hard to get visas to come here, and they're hard to go there too. It's hard to go to Canada for a job if you're an American citizen. Like there's paperwork. It's easier than going to Europe, but there's a lot. So I think it's like, if you can go abroad and you want to live in Italy, go live there 3 months. You can live for cheap, and cheaper than you can in San Francisco. But put yourself in the position to make that connection. You know, it's like, if you're in a room with people that are decision makers, go talk to them. Like, put yourself in a position to meet them. They will be flattered. If you reach out to someone on LinkedIn and you're like, your background looks great, I would love 15 minutes, they're going to feel honored. Like, they're going to be like, oh my God, people looked at my background. And especially if they're alumni, they're going to want to help you. And they also feel flattered that you reached out to them, that you think that they have an impressive career so far. But be genuine. So yeah, put yourself in the right position to make the right connections. That's a lot of the game too. And with the international, we don't know what's going to happen in the world, and we are just all living it day by day, and rules change, and depending on who's the leader in this country and who's the leader in that country, things may get better, things may get worse. But, and that's for everybody, regardless of what you're studying. It's not just about you guys that are in fashion, it's everything. Well, this has been awesome. More school colors. But no, and like this is just, I saw this in Copenhagen once. And like life is a journey and it's not a destination. And like pack up and go for it. So but thanks for having me. This was great. This was seriously.
Thank you, Justin.
That was good.